Senatus popules que Romanus. Hello and welcome back to your series on ancient Rome when in Rome. My name is Mr. Naughton and I just spoke some Latin to you. You're thinking, what the heck does that mean? Before we dive into our lesson today, let's have a little Latin lesson. Repeat after me. Senatus popules que Romanus. Now, the letters are S, P, Q, R. These letters stand for the Senate and people of Rome. This motto was originated during the Republic of Rome. And that's exactly what we're going to study today. Welcome back to When in Rome. This is episode 3, all about the Roman Republic. I'm going to try to keep this under 10 minutes, which is really hard considering this is hundreds of years. It's one of my favorite subjects in history. But here we go. We're going to dive right into the Roman Republic, aka the Senate and people of Rome. So, the Roman Republic. A republic is a type of government. So, it's a type of government where citizens elect leaders. So that's a key difference. When we learned about Athens, they were a democracy. That means the people have the power. The people vote on everything. In a direct democracy, the people vote on everything. In a direct republic, which is what Rome has, the people don't actually vote on the issues. They vote to elect representatives. That's what a republic is all about. That's why the United States is kind of both. It's a democratic republic because we vote on things and we have decisions and the people have the power, but we also elect representatives to represent us in Congress. So we're a democratic republic. In Rome, they're just a good old-fashioned republic, and they're the first republic in world history. So they set up this new government. They just kicked out the Etruscans, and here's something that they're going to be known for. They're going to be known for their strong army made up of legions. In this episode, there's going to be tons of vocab words flying by. So if you need to, feel free to pause, rewind, and listen again to what I said. In the Republic, we have strong armies. So the Romans learned a lot about military from their Etruscans. They were the former leaders that they kicked out. The Etruscans taught them a lot about a strong military, and part of that was dividing it into what was called legions. A legion is basically a group of 6,000 soldiers. So each legion is 6,000 people. And that includes the soldiers, the builders, the planners, all kinds of different soldiers wielding different weapons. And so each legion was 6,000. At first, they only had one legion. But as time goes on, they have more and more until they have dozens of legions, many, many armies across the Roman Republic. So they're doing well. They're training their soldiers more than ever. They're expanding across Italy. So at this point, they have most of the Italian peninsula under their control. So the Republic's doing well. Part of the reason they did so well was because they were really smart planners. They built towns in every region that they conquered or they added to their small little republic. And they built lots of roads. The Romans are famous for their concrete. That was one of the biggest inventions at the time because it allowed them to build so many buildings and roads in order to cross everywhere. And they treated conquered people, for the most part, pretty fairly, especially in Italy early on. When they would add a town to the Republic, they would eventually grant them citizenship and bring them into the Republic and involve them in the government. So that's pretty cool. As time goes on, the Republic is just getting bigger and bigger. Before we continue talking about how the Republic expands, I want to talk a little bit about the government of the Republic. So, we have some notes on the government. First up, I want to talk about some roles and some different people and the parts they play in the government. Oh, but before we can do that, I almost forgot to mention, there's two types of social class in Rome: patricians and plebeians. You're either one or the other. The only group of people that are not included in patricians or plebeians are slaves. Slaves are their own class. But there's patricians and plebeians, and it's so bad sometimes that these two groups even fight each other for control in ancient Rome. Patricians are the elite. They're the nobles, they're the wealthy, upper class of Rome who control the Senate. They're the consuls. They're all the top level positions are the patricians. They're the ones who have more power in Rome. The plebeians are basically everybody else. So it doesn't just mean poor people. It means if you're middle class, if you have some money and you're doing well, or if you're dirt poor, or if you're homeless, you're considered a plebeian. Patricians are the wealthy families who are in charge. So even though it's called a republic, a lot of people think that it's not really a republic because the patricians, for a while, are the ones calling all the shots. So now you know the two classes. Now let's talk about government. At the top, you have consuls. Not a video game console, a consul. So 2 consuls were in charge of the city of Rome, eventually expanded to become more of a republic. And these are the guys who are the leaders of the government, kind of like the president. They're the executives. And they're also the leaders of the military, the 2 consuls. They make the big decisions. They have to be patricians. Next, we have the Senate. These are 300 Roman senators that are elected to positions. They make a lot of the decisions, and they present ideas. They have debates and discussions. So the Senate, and this is where our idea of a Senate comes from the Romans. Something interesting is that if the Senate votes to pass a law or to make something happen, if they vote to do something, the consul can actually say, nope, not happening, with the veto. And this word actually has power today. The president or Congress can override vetoes or make vetoes about laws in the United States today. So it's an important word to know. Veto basically means not happening, overridden, done. So that's a veto. So consuls and senators would have to be patricians. But then we have this other group. This doesn't exist for a while until the plebeians start getting tired of how they're treated. So they ask for a role in government too. And that's when tribunes are created. Tribunes are plebeians that can serve in government and can kind of talk to the Senate and say, hey, we would like to be represented and have these rights too. So plebeians start to be in the government. There's another role that I want to mention briefly because it's important down the road. Dictators. Dictators are, modern day, of course, is when a dictator rules with absolute control and authority over a country. Dictators in Rome, though, is when there's an emergency going on and they give emergency powers to a dictator for a couple months to take over, do whatever they need to do, get in and get out. There's a famous example of a Roman dictator named Cincinnatus. I know, that's what the city Cincinnati is named after. Cincinnatus became dictator, he fought the war, and he went home and went back to farming. Boom, done. That was the Roman idea of dictators. They were honorable and good. That idea is going to change down the road. The word dictator is going to change. And lastly, last thing I want to mention about the Roman government is the 12 tables. They had these 12 stone tables or tablets that had all of their major laws. You can actually study the 12 tables and look at some of their laws. It's really important because it's the first law code in Rome, and it's going to be the basis of the rest of their law codes for the rest of Roman history for hundreds of years. So the 12 tables sets up the Roman Republic. So boom, you've got their government. Now, there's many other roles in the government. I talked about a few and focused on the big roles, the big ideas. There's tons of other jobs and roles like quaestors and praetors and all kinds of other parts of their bureaucracy you can look into if you're interested. They have very, very complex government. But moving on, we learned all about their government of the Republic. Let's talk about what's going to happen to this Republic. They're going to get into a series of wars called the Punic Wars. Punic is just another word for Carthaginians. So down south, there's these other group of people called the Carthaginians. These guys are known for their trade. They have boats going across the Mediterranean. They're making big money, big dollar bills. And the Romans want in on that cash flow. So they start going to war. War, and it's Rome versus Carthage. War number 1. It's kind of like playoff games. There's it's a series of 3, and you need the best out of 2 to win, right? So the first playoff, Rome versus Carthage, they're fighting over the island of Sicily. It's really good for trade. It's really good for making money. So they're fighting over the island of Sicily. Who wins? Rome. So Rome won, Carthage nothing. Game number 2. Ooh, this is a great one. You can study the Second Punic War in a lot of detail. The first one, by the way, was really close. Rome barely won. Second one, Hannibal from Carthage decides it's time for vengeance. I could either sail right into Rome and beat him up, or I could do a tricky surprise attack, go all the way around the Mediterranean, all the way from the north, surprise them on the backs of elephants. One of the coolest things you could learn about in history is Hannibal leading an army on elephants. Yes, he uses elephants in his battles. When they show up to Rome, the Romans are completely surprised. It takes them years to learn how to fight back, but eventually they do. They learn how to beat the elephants. They beat Hannibal, and the Romans win the Second Punic War. So, Rome 2, Carthage nothing. That's the end of the series, right? Wrong. They go back. Number 3, I call it salt, because the Romans are worried that Carthage could make a comeback. They could try to fight them again in another round of playoffs. So they decide they're going to be really salty. They're going to show up to the city of Carthage and literally salt it to the earth. They burnt it down, destroyed everything in the city, and they salted the ground so nothing would ever grow again. And that's why there's no city of Carthage today, because it was literally salted to the ground. No plants would ever grow there again. All buildings were destroyed. So the third one wasn't even really necessary. They just kind of showed up, beat him up, salted Carthage to the ground. So all 3 wars were won by Rome. So Rome's doing pretty good. They become the big power in the Mediterranean Sea. But there's going to be some problems at home. And that's what we'll learn about next week. And always remember, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Hope you are, by the way, hope you're all doing well at home. Miss you guys. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Bye-bye.